Welcome to another presentation of the online ColdFusion Meetup. I'm Charlie Arehart, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And in this edition of the Meetup, our 313th, being recorded on Thursday, April 17, 2025 at noon Eastern, we've got me again. And I always said I didn't want it to be the Charlie show, but I'm happy to offer talks. And this particular one was relevant. And in fact, I just came up with it to do it this week based on the recent updates from CF last week and some other challenges people have had. So that's what we'll talk about. Before I get started, let me just remind you that as far as the meetup is concerned, you can see at the bottom the URL, coldfusionmeetup.com. If you're ever looking for the ColdFusion Meetup website, that's the URL. It redirects to the meetup.com services site where this is hosted and has been for over 20 years. And then also these sessions are recorded, all of them, and they're recorded on YouTube. Right now, this is being live streamed. You're watching on YouTube. Future people will look at the same URL. But to help them find it, I have recordings.coldfusionmeetup.com, which just redirects you to the YouTube playlist. And so that's another way you can find the meetings. And then you'll, as you watch this recording, you'll see that it's shown within the context of a playlist. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started with this talk. Oh, and before I do, let me just throw a quick shout out. Dan Wilson will be on next week, and he's going to be offering a talk on AI for devs. And if you haven't seen the announcements for that yet, again, go check out the site, coldfusionmeetup.com, and sign up to get more notification about that and the URL and all that stuff. All right, let's get started. And also, since I'm here by myself, it would be helpful if somebody would throw in a little comment in the chat just to confirm. There you go. Thank you. Kevin. All right. So let's get started. So solving common problems with CF updates. And there's my information for those who don't know. And I'm what I do and my email address and how to reach me on the various social media. And it's just Arehart, which is nice, makes it really easy. And this presentation that you're looking at, the slide deck for this presentation, is already posted on the website. By the way, as is the link to the recording. You know, it'll be available when we're done, but the slide deck is already there if you wanted to go ahead and get it or get it for later. The point I want to make is don't worry about keeping track of everything I show you, because the slide deck will be there and the recordings will be there. Just kind of let it all wash over you. But there's a QR code, and I'll show that again a couple times to help you out. But it's just carehart.org/presentations. Very simple. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, first, I want to talk about some CF update fundamentals, because I want to make sure we're on the same page with regard to some things that I find as I help people every day. Some things that some might think everybody knows, everybody doesn't know. So we'll get those things out of the way, and some things that you might easily miss. And then we'll move on to some common update challenges. And they're not even trouble. They're just things that you might not realize and know how to deal with. But then we'll move on to troubleshooting some problems that do happen. And also I'll throw in some gotchas to be aware of. And then I'll give you, kind of after all that, a summary of some best practices that I would recommend would help you with each update that you do. And then I'll just mention a few bonus topics towards the end and give you resources for more, as always. All right, so that's our plan for today. I do want to say that this talk, I'm just going to focus on the supported versions of CF right now. Those are CF 2025, 2023, and 2021. I appreciate that some of you may still be on 2018 or 2016 or 11 or 10. And I'll just say that nearly everything I say will apply to everything all the way back to CF10. It happens to be that CF10 is when this home update mechanism was introduced. Prior to that, it was a much more complicated process. Some might remember that back then. Anyway, so the update mechanism that we're talking about has, mostly not changed. I will say it has changed in some important ways, and I'll talk about those as we go. But, 90%, 95% of what I show today would apply even on older versions. But anyway, I just wanted to be clear. I'm not going to really focus on them. Okay, let's get going. So for those who don't know me and what I do for a living, because I present at conferences and give these meetups, and you go, I see me on forums and answering questions. And what do you do for a living? So I just focus on CF server troubleshooting. When I say CF, I mean CF or Lucy or now Boxlang. And I'm an independent consultant. I don't work for anybody. I just work for myself. Love doing it. I assist organizations of all sizes and all experience levels. And I do my work remotely 99% of the time. And it's safe and secure and easy for you by a shared desktop. And my goal is to try to solve most problems in less than an hour. And that's teaching you as we go. So I just don't fix the problem. I help you understand how you can have better understood that problem and maybe don't need me next time. And that's cool. I work my way out of a job. You'll call me the next time. That's my goal, is to just be there. And if you don't find that the time we spend is valuable, then you don't have to pay for it. It's as simple as that. And you can find more about my rates and my approach and my online calendar and everything at carehart.org/consulting. So just go to the carehart.org site and go to consulting. Again, I'm not selling anything in this session, just giving away knowledge. And finally, again, here's the slides for this Prezzo. So if you came in late, I offered it at the front. Here it is again. You can just scan that QR code, or just go to your browser while you're sitting here watching me and go to carehart.org/presentations. I do those when we're sitting at a presentation. That's easier for people to take the screenshot, but feel free, it's there for you. And I just want to go there real quick and show you what are we talking about when you go there. So this is the presentations page of carehart.org. I realize it's a wordy, not pictures, not pretty. Anyway, it's the information. Content is king, right? So anyway, here's my menu, and up here is presentations, and I just took you right to that. And on this presentations page, there's the one for today. And you just find the one you're interested in, you click on it. Any of this is a link, and you click on it, it just jumps down. And there's the title and when I'm giving it, and the PDF link, the recording link, and the description. And then up and down, you'll find previous years and future talks, 180 other different talks on CF that might intrigue you. Okay, let's move on. All right, so now about those CF update fundamentals. Again, I just want to level set our understanding before we talk about troubleshooting. So just want to make sure everybody knows this. There's 3 ways to perform CF updates. 3 ways, not 1 way, not 2 ways, 3 ways. And each has their pros and cons. The first way is in the CF admin, which most people are probably familiar with, but some people go, I can't use that. Okay, got it. Some people will want to use the CF admin's update page. And for those who don't know, let me just show you real quick. We're talking about, for example, in CF 2023, let me just act like I'm coming into the front of the CF admin. So among all these buttons, there's something called the package manager. And when you click on that package manager, it's really this next to last button at the bottom. And again, this interface looks quite different for those who are still on CF 2016 or earlier. In 2018, it changed to look like this. Anyway, the package manager is here at the bottom. And we'll talk more about this a little bit more in different aspects of it and features of it later. But anyway, when you come to it, there's these different core server and packages. And under core server, you can click a button to check for updates. It tells you what update you're on. Now, this is a little confusing because that is the update you're on. Like I happen to be right now on CF 2023 update 12. I'm going to do the update today for you guys. But anyway, that says when did I last do it? And then this has some information about that previous update that was done. And then it does say down here available versions, and it shows the one that I'm on, which I think is kind of weird. I don't know why they choose to do that. I think it should show nothing if there's no new update, and then only show the updates that are beyond where you are. But anyway, there's update 13, which came out last week, and we'll talk about doing that in a moment. But I just want to go over this first. So that's, you could click that button and do that. In fact, now I think about it, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do this. So I'm on 2023. I'm on update 12. Update 13 came out last week. When you do this, for those who don't do this, if you only do it on the command line, what's the deal about doing it in the admin? Well, there's a nice button to download the update or to download and install the update. And I'll just throw out while I'm talking, I'm going to click the download button. That download is now reaching out to Adobe's servers and grabbing that download. And you can see right there, it tells you it downloaded this jar, a jar. That's the name of the update. It's a file, hotfix, whatever.jar. That's what they call it. Don't you worry about it. You don't really need to know about this when you're in the admin. You're just clicking buttons. And then it tells you where it put it. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But for now, you don't need to care about that. You just click the button. It's been downloaded. Now, if it didn't download successfully, that's a problem. And we'll talk about how to deal with that. There's various ways to deal with that problem. But anyway, it downloaded it. It did not install it. If I want to now install it, I would click install. Now, before I do that, I want to encourage you, if you're going to use the admin, take advantage of this information. Even before I downloaded it, when I clicked on 13, the new update, it says, yeah, here's that update. And what kind of update is it? We'll talk about that in a bit. And then what did that update entail? And this is some of the information about what that update entails. And more importantly, look right here, tech note link. Every update has a tech note. And it's really in your interest to read that tech note. And you can just click on this link right here. and it opens up to a new tab in your browser, and it shows you the tech note for the update. And I'll go over these tech notes in a moment because it's very important to understand. Point is, you really should read it. I'm going to move on for now and just say, all right, so we've got the downloaded update, and I could either proceed to install it, or I could download it again if I had some reason to. Anyway, if I'm going to install it, I literally just click install, and it pops up this window. Now, I want to say this is a frustration I forgot to point out as a bullet point. If you're on a 1080p monitor, sometimes the information they show you, either because of the information about packages being updated, or if you have multiple instances, it will show this box, and you're like, well, how do I get there? And I don't know if you guys have experienced this. You can scroll all you want, that ain't going to get you there. So if that happens to you, what you want to do is just use your browser's feature to zoom out. And depending on your browser, there's menu buttons that could get you there. See, there's zoom, and I could zoom out. And it's also control minus for those who know keyboard shortcuts. Control minus will zoom out. And it's interesting that doing it that way, it looks like the page hasn't really helped out. I'm going to try this one more time. Go back to the package manager. Go back to the button to do the update 13 and do the install. And because it's now zoomed out, I'm hoping that, there you go. Now I'm going to tell you, I don't usually do the clicking with the mouse. I just do control minus and it works. So funny little quirk in the browser. It's got nothing to do with CF as far as I know. But anyway, so now either readily I could have seen it, or now I can see to click OK. And if you have multiple instances, for those who are on ColdFusion Standard, there is no way to do instances. But if you're on Enterprise or the developer or trial, you can create multiple instances, and you can apply the update to all the instances or only some of the instances. And for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say only to this one, because I just want to get moving and say, okay, there you go. It's running, and it says ColdFusion will be stopped and restarted. And I'm going to tell you, and I'll remind you later, I always right now hop over to services. I happen to be running on a Windows machine, right? And that CF 2023 was running as a service. There it is. And I'm going to refresh this with F5. You can use the buttons and the mouse in the menu, but F5 refreshes the services panel, and you see it went from running to nothing, meaning it's not running. So right now, CF has stopped, and the update is proceeding. And again, I'll remind you this later, but here's what's going on right now. It's right now, having stopped CF successfully, it's now not doing the update. The first thing it does is it backs up what it's going to update. Yeah, it backs up what it's going to update. And that's not the entire ColdFusion folder. It's not the entire CFusion folder. I said it backs up what the update is going to update. And so that might be sometimes dozens of files, sometimes hundreds of files. And I'm going to say as well that as the updates proceed in time, they actually back up everything that not only this update would do, but previous updates would have done, because we'll talk about how they're cumulative. I said it backs up what it's going to update, then it lays down what it's going to update. Well, I'm going to tell you, it lays down not just what this update wants to lay down, but it actually lays down everything that cumulatively all the prior updates would have done. You don't really know that. Usually you don't pay attention, but it does it. Anyway, the point is it's done. It's laid it down, and now it's starting CF. And if I refresh this by now, it should either be starting or running. There you go. And I just want to say that if you watch this, you can know, did it stop? Yes or no? That's important. Did it come back up? Is it starting or running? That's important before you go looking to check it out. If it's still down, that's still not finished yet. Anyway, I'm going to move on and say it's done, and I'll hop back to the browser. Now, sometimes when you go to the browser, if you do it in the admin, this might still say it's doing it, and you'll be like, hey, I saw it go down. I saw it come up. Why isn't it done? Just trust me. Be patient. Eventually, this either will say, oh, okay, now it's done, or it'll give up and say, look, I don't know. I gave up. It took too long. Well, you watched it go down. You watched it come up. Then you can be pretty confident that it's done. And then I would just argue, if you're ever in that situation, just refresh this page. It's okay. Even if it's still showing it's checking, you can refresh it. And if it's back up, you'd see a login prompt like I'm going to do right now. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to refresh the screen. Now, let me tell you, I would normally see, you would see a login prompt. I'm on my local machine. I turn off the password. I'm tired of typing the password. It's my own machine. No one's going to get into it but me. So anyway, I don't have it showing me ask for the password, but you would normally see it show the password prompt because CF just got restarted. All right. So now as we look on the screen, it says I am now on update 13. And it says this is when it was installed. And here's again the information. We'll talk more about these things later. And again, it says available versions, but it's done. It's done. It's done. We're done. And I'm going to just go ahead and click close. Now, before I do, I want to point out up here, somebody might go, hey, it didn't change that. That is right. That we didn't talk about this earlier, but those of you who do the CF admin know that when there's an update, if your CF is configured to go check on updates, when it detects an update, it tells you, hey, there's an update. And you might go, well, you did the update. Why doesn't it fix that? Well, I just want to tell you, this is a little iframe. This whole thing up here is an iframe. And watch, if I right click on it and choose refresh frame, there it is. Now, you don't have to do that. I think if I'd refreshed the whole browser, it would have done it. Certainly, if I'd closed the browser and opened it, it would have done it. The point is, the update was done. Just some reason it didn't refresh that little iframe. And if you want to, you can force it to refresh. But what matters is this. All right, so that's that, doing the update. See no questions or comments. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Now, you can also do a command line update. And I know this talk wasn't supposed to be about how to do updates, but again, I'm trying to say some of these things let me introduce to you some of the key concepts you need to understand when you're trying to troubleshoot. So let me move on. If you can't or don't want to do the update in the admin, and we'll talk about why that might be so in a minute or later, you can do the update from the command line. And this is documented in the tech note. We talked about the tech note. In the tech note, it tells you you can do this command line update. And it's a Java command. You say java-jar, and then you name that hotfix file. Remember that downloaded hotfix file? You name that file. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to go to my CF 2025. All right, so I'm switching tabs. Now I'm in my CF 2025, and I'll just start up at the top. There's my CF 2025 at the top. Here's my package manager. And here's, again, we'll talk more about packages later, but here's the core server. I got one update to do. It says I've got one update to do. It's the first update for CF 2025. I could proceed to do all this right here. Now, one, I'm going to remind you, I could click download and it would just download it. And it told you where it downloaded it. And I'll remind you that in a moment. But it downloads to a folder called Bundles Update Installers. Don't worry about that right now. I'll show you in a moment. But the point is, I could click that download button and it would download it, the jar. It would download it to that file, so that folder. And then I could run the command line to do the update. Before I do that, I want to show you as a reminder, if I click on this tech note link, if you're going to do the manual update, you want to know this. And we'll talk about what's in this tech note in a moment. It's another point I'll cover later, but I want to show you, if you scroll down here, there's a section called installing the update offline manually. Now, this is in all the tech notes for all the CF updates, not just 2025. It's in 2023s and 2021s. It's nothing new. And it says you can download the installer from this link. And if I mouse over it, I know it's a little tiny, but down at the bottom it says the link, and it's the hotfix jar from the Adobe website. So if I click this link, it's going to open, in my browser, the downloading mechanism. Okay, there's the downloading mechanism. And I'm just going to go ahead and go to the folder where it's being downloaded. Now, it's going to be in my downloads folder. I could just run it from there. I don't want to double click it and run it. Oh, don't get that idea, because you want to run as administrator and you can't right click and run a jar file as administrator. But I'm going to hit refresh, and there's the jar. And I just want to repeat, if you have Java installed as what's called a public JRE, you could try to run it because it's got the little Java icon, but you want to run this as administrator, so you don't want to do that. But you want to go to the command line and run it. And again, this is discussed in the tech note. It shows you the command to do. I want to just say, should I just leave it here? Yeah, you could leave it here. It doesn't matter where it is. Could I go put it in that update installers folder? I could. CF would have put it there. It so happens that in 2025, I don't yet have one, right? That was my first update. So I'm going to go on up to my CF 2021, CF 2025. So here's my 2025 folder, and there's that bundles. And I said there'd be a folder called update installers. Well, there isn't one yet because I didn't use the interface to download it. And this is the first update. So if I wanted to, I could create that folder and put it in there. But if you're someone who's in an offline environment, you don't have to put it there. That's only if the admin is going to find it. If you don't plan to use the admin, you don't need to put it there. You can leave it wherever you want when you downloaded it. Then you just need to tell it to install it using the command line. I'm running out of time. I don't really want to take the time right now. Those who do manual offline installs, you know what to do. But anyway, here's the commands right here too. You point to where you have Java, and that there is a Java in ColdFusion's like ColdFusion 2025 has a JRE, ColdFusion 2023 has a JRE, bin, Java, exe, -jar, and then you name the jar. And they're saying if you had put it in that bundles update installers, you could go do that. Okay. Now they talk about this package zip. We haven't talked about packages yet. You can also get this zip and do that manual step. I'm not ready to talk about that right now, so hold that thought. So anyway, if you ran that Java jar command, you would see a pop-up on the screen, or if on a command line terminal only mode, you'd be walked through a screen that would do the update. It would ask you sure you want to do it, and where is it, and you would do it, and it would install the update. It's as simple as that. So it really is very simple to do a command line update. And sometimes you might need to, and that's a quick overview of how to do it. Remember, this is more about troubleshooting, so I don't want to get bogged down in how to do the update. That's there in the documentation. I do want to point out this third choice that people don't know because it's new in 2021 and above, CFPM for CF Package Manager. Now, again, we haven't talked about packages. I'll get to that in just a moment. But this CFPM tool was introduced in CF21 to help manage packages and installation and updating and stuff related to packages. But it can also be told to install a jar, the update jar. So again, I'll point you to the docs later that talk about that. You can read about that. It's even mentioned in the tech note. I just want to do a real quick find on CFPM. And there you go. They talk about you can also use CFPM, and it's a BAT file or an SH on Linux and Mac. Anyway, I'm going to move on just to say those are the three available options. We'll leave it at that for now. And again, the tech note discusses them. Now, I do want to say before I move on, people who run command box, or if you run CF containers, Docker images, Kubernetes images, what do you want to call them? They're containers. There's ones from Adobe and there's ones from Ortus command box images. But anyway, whoever's images you're using, or if you're using command box, I'll grant you don't need to do any of this stuff. All of them, you just point to an updated CF and it pulls that in and you run with that updated version. Again, this isn't the talk to get into that. There's many talks about command box. I've got talks about using Docker images of ColdFusion. If you go to the presentations and look for the word Docker, you'll find I've done 2 or 3 presentations on how ColdFusion's Docker images work. They've been there since CF 2018, and I've talked about them over the years. And I'm just saying, you can just point to a new tag if you know what Docker is about, or images, containers. You point to a tag, and you can point to the 2023.0.13, and that's going to pull down the image that is ColdFusion with 2021 update, 2023 update 13 already installed. So anyway, I'm going to leave it to you to say that, yes, I get it, that if you use these other ways, you don't need to do all this stuff. But this talk is for those who aren't using those and that do the updates, and what do you have to deal with. So what does the update do? I just want to remind you, remember this slide deck will be there for you to look at later or to share with your colleagues. Once you start an update, what really happens? Well, it's actually a Java process that launches in the background that does the update. I could have gone to the command line and launched it. I'm saying if you go into the admin and do it, it launches a Java process for you. Yeah, and you could open Task Manager or Activity Monitor on Mac, or look at PS, or however you like to look at top, whatever you want to look at. You could see there's a Java process that launches, actually, that does the update. And that, A, attempts to stop the CF service and related services. And then B, it tries to back up those files that will change per the update. And then it lays down the files reflecting the update. And that's a lot of different folders that might potentially have files that are updated. And I'll remind you that it lays down all the updates, all the files updated by the cumulative result of all the prior updates, and it backs up all those files. So anyway, that's what it does in the background. And let me just say this. I realize now I didn't make a bullet point about this. I think I want to take a moment to talk about this. Sometimes people are a little surprised at how long it takes for that update to work. And now that I've explained, well, it's got to stop the service. That shouldn't take too long, but it can. Then it's got to back up those files, which shouldn't take too long, but it can, and I'll say why. And then it's got to lay down the files, and that shouldn't take too long. Even if it's 1,000 files, that shouldn't take that long, right? Why might these 2 steps take a long time? If this was a class, I'd be asking, what do you think, class? But in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. If and everybody does these days, has antivirus, if you're on Windows, you got Defender, and you might have added your own antivirus tools. These days, antivirus tools do a lot more than just watch what you're downloading, right? This is after it's been downloaded. This is running the update. Most modern antivirus solutions They watch everything you do, every file you read or write, definitely ones you write, and surprisingly, even ones you read, they say, hey, let me look at that. Hey, let me look at that. So everything you try to do, like this backing up of many files, that's going to be backing up potentially hundreds or thousands of files. That might take a long time because it says, hey, let me look at each one of those. And that's one reason why such processes can be slowed. Then it lays down the files that do reflect the update. Well, again, that could be maybe a couple thousand files. And you go, hey, let me look at each one of those. So this could take longer than you might think it should. And I'll just say one more time, if you're watching the Java process running in the background, or if you're sitting there on the admin waiting for it to come back, I'm just saying this is what's going on. You could actually even dig into it and see it. Then the update tries to download, you already downloaded the update. I'm saying after you run the update tries to download any package updates. We'll get back to packages in a moment. So it does download any package up. It tries. I keep saying it tries to back up, tries to stop CF, tries to download. And then it tries to start CF and related services. And then it writes an update log. And we'll talk about that in a bit. And then let me tell you that people don't know this. The first startup of CF after the update is when CF tries to implement any updated packages. That's a subtlety that's not obvious. So these are the things that happen during an update. And the last thing is if there's a package update, it's done not during the update, it's downloaded at the end of the update, then during the first startup of CF, which again, it tried to start, right? The update tried to start CF. That first startup then tries to implement any updated packages. And because they're cumulative, each update is doing more and more. The number of files being backed up is getting bigger. The number of files being laid down is getting bigger. And anyway, that's what I've said. Okay. So what is this about packages? You might go, what are you talking about? I hear this. What does it mean? So CF 2021 introduced notion of packages or modules. Sometimes they call them modules. Sometimes they call them packages. They split CF functionality into about 50 different packages. And let me just take a quick look. I'm going to show you a CF admin right here's 2025. It could be anyone. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. And I'm going to scroll down. And these are all of them. Now, I know that, I'm going to zoom in. Remember, we zoomed out to Control 0, by the way. Control 0 on a keyboard in any browser resets the zoom that you do. Control plus zooms in, Control minus zooms out, and Control 0, they're all right next to each other, that zooms back out. So now I'm zoomed back out, but I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little, or zoom in a little more to help you see. And I have a browser extension that's making this dark mode. I'm sorry, I should have turned that off because you might be going, hey, I don't have dark mode in ColdFusion. No, it's my browser with an extension that makes it do dark mode. Anyway, here's things like admin API, administrator, Ajax, some things you may not use like AWS DynamoDB and AWS Lambda. Well, that's the point. If you don't use those things, you could tell CF, hey, get rid of that package. I don't use that. But by default, when you install CF with the full, what's called the full installer, it implements all the packages, all 50 packages. And so again, you could opt to uninstall some if you didn't want to, or during the startup, different ways of running CF. I've done talks on how to install CF, and there's different ways you can install it, and different ways can lead to you having different packages. I'm going to move on and say, if you update CF, that updates the packages by default. So I can show you this a little more clearly on the CF 2025 that I had not yet updated. If I go back up to the top of this page, we were doing what they call the core server update. And that would then also update whatever packages were related to that. So there were 2 package updates related to that update 1 of CF 2025, which I haven't done yet. So if I did the update of the core, then it would update the packages. It just does it for you. And we need to take that into account when we're trying to solve some problems. And I just showed you can view them at the bottom of the package manager page, and the top shows the core update, which is updating CF itself, and then the bottom shows both installed and available packages. So if I had uninstalled any package, it would be listed under available packages. And some of you might see an environment where you intentionally uninstalled some package and it's here. Let me throw out that if an update fails and somehow a package gets uninstalled unexpectedly, you'll see it down here as available packages. You go, wait, I didn't tell it to uninstall that. So we'll move on and talk about some other stuff related to that in a moment. Now, if you click on each one, any of these packages, whether they're installed or uninstalled, like I'll click on this administrator one and scroll down to look at it. It tells me what it does, it's the administrator, like the administrator itself has a package, and it's always installed by default. Anyway, moving on. There was in 2025, update 1 has an update to this administrator package. So there it's telling me, hey, there's an update 1 for the package for the administrator for CF 2025. And I'm currently on no updates. That's why it says there's one update available. So anyway, that's how you could control its version. And there's a gotcha related to that I'm going to talk about later when I talk about gotchas. So hold that thought. You might already be wondering about it. All right, I'm going to move on. So where are these updated downloads, or where are the downloads of the updates to be found? Somebody might wonder, you've probably had sometime you've had trouble. In the CF admin on the package manager page, there's a settings tab. Many people don't notice this. Again, I'm in 2025, but it looks the same in 2023 and 2021. So again, here was the packages. When you first come to the package manager, you don't notice it, but you're on a tab called packages, and there's a tab called settings. And on that settings page, among the many things that are in there, one of them is, where should ColdFusion find the updates? And it gets pre-populated by Adobe to this URL. And if you ever change it and want to set it back, there's a button that says, hey, reset it back to the default. And then there's a packages site. Where should CF find the updates for the packages? I just want to talk about that real quick. So this was that URL. And if you visit it, it actually does a redirect to this URL. Now I bring this up because later we'll talk about some problems that can happen. If CF can't reach these URLs, either the box on which CF is running or CF itself, for some reason, you could have firewall stuff set up and you didn't give CF permission. If CF can't reach not only this URL, but if it can't redirect to this URL, then it will not be able to download the updates. And you'll be pulling out your hair wondering, hey, why doesn't the update work? I can't seem to download it. And you may just need to open your firewall. If it's somehow limiting what's allowed to be called out, you not only have to allow that adobe.com, www.adobe.com, technically that's the URL, but you also have to allow cfdownload.adobe.com because it redirects to that. And sometimes people get in trouble because they open up that because it's on the page, but they don't notice that it does a redirect. All right, so that's it. And the redirect is to an XML file, and that XML, result comes back listing all the details for each update. And I'll just show you real quickly what that looks like. Sorry, I thought I had done it. I'm going to do it real quick because I think it's interesting. So I'm going to get this one because this is what typically people would do. I'm just going to get it from the admin. There you go. It's right here. And I'll open a tab and go to that. That's what that URL redirected to the one. I know it's a little small for some of you. Just trust me. I gave you on the screenshot or on the slides. That's the URL that it did redirect to. And this is what comes back, big honking chunk of XML. And this is not only about 2025, but it's about 2023 and 2021 and 2018 and 2016. It's quite a big file. You can see on the right, the scroll bar. There's an XML chunk for each update that's ever happened, and CF just knows how to process it and figure it out. All right. And as I said, when you download the update, the resulting jar, by the way, the jar name is right there. Like there's the jar name for CF 2025, and it's also here. This is the actual full URL that CF pulls it down from. And the tech note had a link to it too. When you were doing it manually, this is what you would have downloaded if you'd done it by the link in the download in the tech note. And it would have put it in the bundles update installers. And then the packages update URL, that's unique to each version. Just pay attention. Look, this is in my 2025. This is what it looks like. Again, it's www.adobe.com. So you got to open up that. And it goes to CF 2025 packages. And that redirects to cfmodules.adobe.com/CF 2025. And actually it points to a bundles dependency JSON, which is just a big hunk of JSON, not XML JSON. So let me go get that. I'm just going to open that in this next tab to move on. So there's the redirect and there's the JSON. It's a big hunk of JSON, and it is unique to 2025. This does not have 2023 and 2021. It's a URL unique to that version. And this is the update 0 stuff. And there's another one later for the update 1 stuff. Right, so that's the way that works. And it's just important to note these for some of the troubleshooting and download failures that we'll talk about. And when it gets downloaded, that gets, sorry, let me back up. These URLs, like this one here, the first one, and this one, these URLs, they're in the admin. I just showed you that. They're in the admin right there. As some of you know, things in the admin are stored by ColdFusion in an underlying XML file. There's a bunch of them, and they're in the what's called the CFusion lib or a lib folder. And if you have instances, it'd be the my instance lib folder. In that lib folder, there's a bunch of different XML files for Neo data sources and Neo, cron for the scheduled task. Well, there's a Neo updates.xml. It's actually used as an underscore. All the other ones use a dash, but this one's Neo underscore updates.xml, and it's in that lib folder. And in that XML are XML entries that name those URLs, the first ones that it shows in the admin. So if you change it in the admin, it changes in the file. And if you need to change it because something's wrong with the admin, you can't get to it, you can change it in this file. All right. So again, whenever I talk about CFusion, in my examples, I show CFusion. If you have an instance, it'd be your instance name, whatever. Just want to get that out of the way. Okay. Now, what's in your update? Right? To quote the Capital One commercial. CF updates can contain one or more of the following things. They can be security fixes. They can be bug fixes. They can be feature changes. Yes. Tags, functions, admin features, could be anything. And finally, feature additions. They could add new tags, add new functions, add new capabilities. So yes, a given update could do one or more of these things. So just be aware. Because again, sometimes when you're trying to solve a problem, you don't realize that, you say, oh, I just thought it was a security update. And no, they fixed some bugs and the bug fix might have caused a problem. Or they added some features and, oh, you didn't pay attention to the tech note that said this feature was changed and you need to deal with it. So you got to read those tech notes. And these are identified in each update's tech note. And I want to talk about that. And again, I know this is like fundamental still, but you need to understand these fundamentals to solve problems. So each update does have a tech note. We've talked about that. And it's listed in the admin. We talked about that. And it's available online. And it's linked to from various resources about each update. So Adobe does a blog post about each update. They tell you a link to the tech note for that. And it's very important to read the update tech notes. I just can't stress enough. You've got to read them. And I want to show you an example of one. And we were just looking at one a moment ago. I just hit the back button. There you go. So I happen to be on the update tech note for CF 2025 update 1. So it'll always tell you what it is, and we'll talk about the URL in a moment. But there it is. Now, don't pay attention to this date. That's what the last updated date is. I would recommend you strongly scroll down and see what does it say right here. That's when the update was released. Sometimes that's older and the date it was updated is newer. You don't want to get confused. This is not the date it was released. This is the date it was released. I've also seen that update date be reflecting recent dates, and I know there's nothing changed, and that's just some problem with the documentation system. Anyway, more importantly, what does the update have in it? Well, it talks about that they recommend you consider securing your server with what's called the ColdFusion lockdown guide or tool. We're not going to talk about that today. They talk about how you may need to update your web server connectors, and there's a table at the bottom of the tech note about that. I'll mention briefly at the end that that's an important thing to do, but we're just talking about the update of CF for now. And then they talk about what's new or changed. And if it's a security update, they point you to an APSB, the Adobe Product Security Bulletin. And that has information you'll want to read. People don't read them, but you should read these things anyway. And there might be more details, and there might be new JVM flags updated, and they might tell you something else. Like in this case, if you use the PDFG service, the CF HTML to PDF, if you leverage that feature of CF, and you did it through an installer, like you put on another server, they're telling you, hey, whether you put it on another server or you installed it on this server, if you separately installed the thing called the add-on service, they're saying, hey, we've got a new add-on installer. That's pretty rare. I think that's the first time in all the updates I've seen that they offered a refreshed add-on installer. So again, you just have to read these. And then they talk about securing Solar. Solar is also in the add-on service. That's the CF search, CF collection, CF index. We're going to move on. Then they may talk about known issues. Well, you got to read that because they might say something important. And one of the things they say is something I'm going to reiterate later. because it's a thing I think you should just get used to. And then they have prerequisites, which are interesting, and talk about some stuff that might be interesting to you. I'll leave you to read about that. I want to say this JDK flag stuff, oh my goodness, please. 90% of you, 99% of you, this does not apply to you. I've asked them to make this clear. I know it says for application servers. I know it says on JEE applications. And you might go, I run ColdFusion. It's on Tomcat. This must be for me. No, it's not. This is not for you. If you run ColdFusion by using the installer or doing what's called the zip install, again, see my talk on ways to install CF, this does not apply to you. This is for people that do what's called WAR file deployment or EAR file deployment. If you know what that is, this is talking to you. If you've deployed ColdFusion's WAR or EAR on your own Tomcat, on your own WebLogic, on your own Wildfly or Jetty or whatever you might have installed it onto, they're saying, hey, we need you to think about setting these JVM flags in that environment. This is not about 90%, 99% of people that install CF. And then they talk about installing the updates and doing the offline mode. And then there might be some post-install steps. And then they talk about uninstalling. And then finally at the bottom, since CF11, they've had this, did the update require a package, a connector update? I just want to say real quick, I'm going to switch this and I'll presaging what I'll show later. Let's say I looked at 2023's update 13 that came out, or sorry, I typed 12, doesn't matter. My point is that has all the same stuff, different information. This was the previous update. Don't worry about that. My point is all the update tech notes, when you go to the very bottom, and I wanted to show you 2013 because that's had a lot more updates. For update 13, sorry, CF 2023, I meant to say, for CF 2023, it's had a lot of updates. And if you'd applied update 12, they're saying, well, if you were on update 11 and went to 12, no, you don't need to worry about updating the connector. But if you were on update 4 of 2023 and you somehow jumped to 12, they're saying, yeah, you need to update your connector. So they're, again, I don't like the wording sometimes, but they're trying to help you to know, depending on which update you're going to, do you need to worry about this thing called updating the web server connector? And now after the connector stuff, there is also, since CF 2021, they have a nice little table that says, did this update incorporate some new packages? And again, I happen to pick 12. This was the one that came out in January. I'm going to go ahead and change this to 13 to make the a little more relevant current technical discussion. So I'm going to page up from the bottom. It's right there at the very bottom. So update 13, yes, it updated these packages. And update 12, yes, it updated these packages. And update 11 updated it, but they didn't tell you. And then 10 and 9 didn't. And then 8 and 7 did, but they didn't tell you. So you just have to look closely. And the point is, it might be important for you to know, did my update entail package updates? Or, as important, if I'm skipping updates, like if I was on update 10 and I went to update 13, I'm going to get whatever package updates were done in 11 and 12 and 13. And that might be important for some reason. I'm just saying you want to be aware of that stuff. Okay. And I showed you that the URL is one that you can just modify. It looks like this, for example, 2025 update 1, and I changed it to 2023 update 13. You could absolutely do that, and that makes it real easy. There's another way to find all the updates. Check this out. Some people don't know this. They have a page that lists all the updates for each release. There's the URL. And if you just Google ColdFusion 2025 updates or ColdFusion 2023 updates, Google and perhaps Bing and others will tell you that first up. It'll say, oh, here's the page that lists all the 2025 updates, all the 2023 updates, all the 2021 updates. And I've got one of those. I just want to show you here. So this is the page for just 2023. Again, I chose to do this 2023 updates page because it has a lot more updates. Look, as I scroll down here, there's update 13. Then there's update 12 and 11. So yeah, check it out. There's a separate page that lists all the updates, when they came out, what did they entail. There's a link to the tech note. I wish they would say the tech note, but they say this article. Anyway, there's the jar to do the download, and then here's the zip for the package updates. If you're going to do that manually, again, read the tech note to understand that. And it just goes on, showing that for each of the updates. That's pretty cool. Well, that's not all. There's also a release notes page for each update that summarizes what key changes were made. And a lot of people have no idea this is out there. So again, there's one for each release. 2023's update release notes, 2021's update release notes. They have not yet done one for that one update that came out last week. Maybe they will soon have one for 2025. But anyway, let me show you that. This is the one for 2023. Again, 2023's update release notes. And it's similar to what we just looked at, but it focuses more on what changed. And sometimes it highlights something that maybe isn't in that other thing. Like it might mention that, this stuff that they did, and that might be different. I'm just saying it's worth knowing about it and looking at it. It might be interesting if you're wondering what happened in a particular update. Okay. Now, I just want to mention uninstalling the updates. Just as updates can be installed, they can be uninstalled, and that can be done in the package manager page. Just want to show you real quick. And this, again, is going to the troubleshooting thing, because let's say, like, here's my 2023. And if I go to packages, well, actually, I'm on the page itself. That's where I wanted to be. Good. It didn't change. Okay. Yeah, it took me there. Anyway, on this page, here's my package manager. Here's my update 13 that I applied today. Remember down here, it said I did it today. I'm on Central Time. Anyway, as I go down the page, there's an uninstall button. So yeah, having applied an update, I can uninstall that update by just clicking that button. Or, let me keep going. There's an uninstall folder. Now, let me just go up to my 2023, since we just did that one. And I was going to talk about the logs in a moment, but anyway, under my case, CFusion HF updates, I'm realizing now I hadn't discussed this yet, so just forgive me for that. But anyway, under CFusion, or your instance name maybe, but usually even then it's under CFusion HF updates for hotfix updates. There's a folder for every update you apply. Now, I happen to apply each update when they come out. So there's 13, 12, 11, 10, but you might have 13 and then 9 because you didn't do 10, 11, 12. And that's okay. It's whatever ones you did, there's a folder for it. Well, I'm saying if you go into that folder, there's several things here. I'll talk about some of them later, but one of them is an uninstall folder. And in that uninstall folder, there's an uninstaller jar. Yeah, there's an uninstaller jar. And again, you could, if you have Java installed in such an appropriate way, you'd think you could double click on this, but you should run this as administrator. So you should go to the command line and you should run the java-jar and point to that uninstaller. And that's discussed in the update tech note as well. But I just want you to know, yes, you can do it. All right. And this uninstall will restart CF. So same thing. If I was going to do an uninstall, I would be hopping over to services and I would watch it to say, did CF go down? Yep. Did it stay down while it did that work? Yep. Did it come back up? Yep. And the uninstall, what it does is it always just reverts you to whatever update you were on. So if I had been like on update 9 and I went to 13, if I uninstall 13, I don't go back to 12. I go back to 9 because that's what I was on. It just reverts you to where you were. And I just realized a little gotcha I didn't think to mention. You know those backups that I said they're taking? One of the backups they take is the JVM config file, for those who know what that is. When you do an update, it back up the JVM config file. Well, if 4 months ago you did update 9, and then today you did update 12, it would back up today the JVM config as of today. And let's say a few months later, you go to update, 14 of 2023, and it'll back up the JVM config and everything as of then. If you uninstall that, it's going to revert it to what it was today when update 13 was taken. And if you've made changes to that JVM config between those times, that's a problem that can happen. Sometimes people don't notice that when they uninstall updates, it might revert files you didn't realize the backup was taken during the install of the update. So again, I'm sorry I didn't elaborate on that more clearly, but hopefully it makes sense to some of you. You can follow up with me with any questions if you have them. Point is, it does leverage that backup folder that was created during the update, and it just basically rolls back whatever's in there. And it also downgrades the packages, right? So if you were on, let's say, update 13, went back to 9, it's not going to leave the packages relative to update 13. It's going to roll them back to what's appropriate for update 9. And again, it'll do that after the uninstall of the update. On the next startup of CF, that next startup would downgrade the packages. And we'll talk about how to see that it's performed during the startup. So let me just say some common challenges. If you are skipping updates, I've said this more than once, I want to repeat, they're cumulative. You can skip them. If you're behind, that's understandable. You don't need to do them one at a time. I see people do that. It's like, no, you don't need to do one at a time. If you want to, you can. I know some people think, oh, I want to be careful, but I'm just saying you don't have to. But you must consider the tech note for each update. If you're skipping 2 or 3 updates, you need to read the tech notes for the updates you're skipping, because they're going to say stuff in some updates that they're not going to repeat in the later tech note. It's your responsibility to read those tech notes. And they tell you, I encouraged this some years ago, and they thankfully do it. Right, so here's update 13. And it says, hey, note, the updates are cumulative and contain all updates from previous ones. You can skip them. You can apply the latest. Not those you're skipping. You can just go right to the latest, but you must take note of any changes that are implemented in each of the updates you're skipping. So again, read the tech note for each update you're skipping. That's what they're trying to tell you. People don't read the tech note. The warning's there. I'm telling you, part of this talk is to just give you things to be prepared to avoid problems instead of just trying to solve them. All right. And some updates do introduce major changes, and this is why it's important to pay attention. So, for example, the March 24 updates for 21 and 23, and that was it, 23. At that time, it was only 23 and 21. The March updates back then introduced a change to the default for what's called implicit scope searching. And if you aren't aware of that and you go to the later update, your apps could start breaking left and right. And it's not because of a change made by this update. It's because of a change made by an update you had skipped, and now it's getting applied. So you got to read the tech note for the update for March 2024 to understand that problem. And there was a blog post at the time, and I did a blog post. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. June of last year, there was an update that changed the default CFMX compat algorithm used by encrypt and decrypt and hash and I forget the other ones, but the point is there were 7 functions that were affected. If you don't specify the algorithm, it used to default to CFMX compat. After that update, it no longer defaults to that. You either have to change your code or add a JVM arg to revert that behavior. Anyway, that's discussed in that tech note, all of it, and you need to read it. The October update was a bug fix and had some feature changes, and people who don't pay attention were like, hey, what this changed? I didn't know because the latest update tech note didn't tell me. Well, it's not that job's. It's not the latest update tech note's job to tell you what was changed, 2 or 3 updates ago. It's your job. Okay, just going to stress that point. All right, moving on. How can you know that an update's been released, right? Kind of moving on, wrapping up this stuff. The admin tells you, now I want to talk about this. We showed that little icon in the top right corner. It tells you there's an update available. That's done if you've told the admin to do it. When you install CF, it asks you during the install process, do you want to see updates? It says, do you want to automatically check for updates? And people server updates, and people see that installer question at the end of the installer, and they go, oh, I don't want you to automatically apply updates to my server. Well, it didn't mean your server, it meant ColdFusion. And it isn't saying automatically apply them. It's saying, do you want me to automatically check? And what it does is look, if I go to the settings page in the package manager, right at the top, there's this setting called automatically check for updates. And every login of the admin, when you log into the admin, if that's checked, CF hops out, says, hey, is there an update? And if so, it pops that little asterisk in the top right corner that says, hey, there's an update. All right, so that's what that means. And if that's not doing that for you, come into this settings page of the package manager, and you probably don't have this checked. And if you don't, then check it, because it's a good thing. Everybody should have it. I wish that they didn't even ask that question because it's confusing. But some people would say, I don't want you to bother checking it because my server is offline. You're not going to be able to reach that anyway. I don't want to waste network traffic of you trying to check and it's failing because it caused my firewall log to track that you're trying to go to a page. Okay, I get it. There's a 1% of people maybe wouldn't want that to be checking. So I just lament that they ask, because some people misconstrue it and they turn it off and then they don't even know there's updates. So that's one way to know that there's updates. All right. There's also a hidden gem here, a way to get notified about by email of an update. Yes, you can configure on that same page. People don't even pay attention to it. Look right here on this package manager settings page. Well, look at that. There's a notification. Check for updates. And if there's an update available, send an email from. Yes. So you can configure that. And then it relies on the mail page of the admin. If you go up here to the settings button and then mail, if you have that properly configured, I at the moment don't have that properly configured, but if you have that properly configured, then when it detects there's a new update, it will send you an email. Pretty cool, right? So anyway, yes, you can do that. Also, Adobe writes a blog post whenever there's a new update on their forum. And this is the forum. And you can just Google Adobe ColdFusion forum and you'll find this link. And it's too bad that it's such an unwieldy link. But anyway, that's the link to the Adobe ColdFusion forum. And there's discussions there every day. I know there's other places like Slack and Facebook and all that stuff. I'm just saying this is the formal official Adobe place where things like this are announced. And yeah, every update that comes out, they do a blog, a forum thread discussion. It's not really a blog. Anyway, then check this out. Pete Freitag of Foundeo.com offers his Hack My CF service. It's not free, but it's definitely worth the money, I would argue. But anyway, it's your call. You'll see I have a quote there. This is, I think everybody should have it. But anyway, moving on. Others have said it too. It's hackmycf.com, and you pay him. And he does many things beyond just telling you there's an update. He checks your server and tells you if you need an update. You specifically. He tells you if you specifically need updates done, web server connectors done, Java update done, various security things he checks. My point is that's what his service does. But one of the benefits is, yeah, as soon as there's an update, A, if he detects you don't have it, he'll soon tell you you don't have it. And B, he sends to all the clients of the service an email that says, hey, there was an update today. So that's a nice benefit. And then lastly, the Adobe security team, the people that create those APSBs, they offer an email notification service. Yes. So if you go to, sorry, I meant to offer that link. Oh, my bad. Oh, I didn't mean to hit that. Oh, crap. There you go. There it is. Yeah, I just hit the wrong key. There's the URL. Again, you could just Google it and you'd find it. And I'm starting to notice we're running out of time. This should probably have been in 2 parts. I even left some stuff out, and then I'm thinking of things as we go. So I apologize. First time offering the talk. But let's move on. What if your server doesn't have internet access? That's a common problem. It may be that for security reasons, CF can't access the internet. And I meant to say the server can't access the internet, or it may be that CF itself or the Java process for some reason can't access the internet. Or let me just say it maybe can't access the Adobe server specifically, right? That all these could be different problems. And so I gave you those URLs. You could download them yourselves if you wanted to. And I want to point out that on that same package page, look, if we keep scrolling down the page, look, proxy settings. If you have a proxy in your environment, you can configure the CF update mechanism to use that proxy, and then maybe it can reach the server. And you as the CF administrator might not know there is a proxy, you may not care, it never matters. But if you tell somebody, hey, my CF can't seem to download these updates, they may say, oh, well, just here's the proxy. And often people put such a proxy in their browser to allow them to access stuff in their browser. Well, you would add that to that page to allow the update mechanism to use that proxy. That's all it would use it for. But if you can't reach it, it's going to fail. And then you'll need to do a manual update. And here's where I talked about, I knew I'd talk about it later. You would download the jar in the tech note. You could get it from some other server and place it onto the server. And then again, CF would normally put it in the bundles update installers. You can put it wherever you want. And then there's a link to download packages, and the tech note tells you about that and the instructions on what to do with it. And I'm going to leave you to read all that. And then you'd set this package site URL to point to that package location. And again, this is a common source of people's concern is they do maybe the first few bullet points, but they forget this last one. And then the update mechanism doesn't know where you put the zip that was extracted that had the package updates. Again, I don't have time to get into all that, but it should point to a bundle dependency JSON file in the extracted zip, just like that's what that redirect ultimately pointed to, was a bundle dependency JSON file. So move on. Then you can run the update manually using this Java jar command, like I talked about before, or use the CFPM. So again, I presaged this earlier. See the tech note for the details. They do talk about it towards the end. Recent CF updates have said, hey, after you do the update, you ought to clear the Felix cache. And they sometimes say this problem will happen and therefore you should do it. And it might be in a previous tech note that you're not reading. And so I'm just going to tell you, if you want to or are told to clear the Felix cache, sometimes they tell you in the tech notes, sometimes they don't. It's a folder under your CFusion bin. So if I real quick hop out to my, for example, here's my CFusion for 2023. Here's my CFusion bin. And there it is, called the Felix cache. So it's just a folder. I'll go up here and show you up at the top. It's Felix cache under bin, under CFusion, or your instance name. The point is, if they tell you to clear that cache, it's a folder of several hundred files. I mean, if I go up here and do a properties, it's 1,000 files and 600 folders. What do they mean clear it? Well, they don't mean go in there and manually delete each folder. Just delete the folder. Now, let me tell you, stop CF and then delete the folder. You don't need to save it. You won't be able to delete it if CF is running. If you try to delete it and CF is running, it's going to say, hey, it's locked. Well, as soon as CF stops, then you could retry it or just wait till you stop it and then delete it and then start CF. And it will automatically recreate the folder and populate it as needed. You don't need to save it. You don't need to worry about it. Just do it, okay? And I'm just of the opinion that after every update, you should do this because some updates tell you to do it, some don't. There's no reason not to. I've not heard of any reason not to do it. It's just quick and fast. And I would just, after the update came back up, I'd check what I'm going to show you in a moment. And if all's well, proceed. Now I'm going to tell you, since we're on the meetup and I wouldn't have somebody following me in this room, I'm going to go ahead and keep going. It might be about 20 minutes more, maybe 30. We might have some follow-up. So for those who can stick around, great. Feel free. Don't forget, this is all being recorded. I'm just going to go ahead and plow on because this is good stuff. I want to keep going. And, my first time offering the talk, I realized now I could tweak some things to make it go within an hour. But if you guys are cool with it, I'm going to keep going. And I want to say the update you're applying may not entail package updates, but the ones you're skipping may. And it's the updates of the packages is what works with manipulating this Felix cache. And they're telling you to clear it out so that it starts over from fresh based on the most recently installed packages. So I'm just saying, hey, look, after every update, once you've made sure all's well, stop the update. In fact, even if you find things aren't well, sometimes the problem is you need to stop the update, delete the Felix cache, start the update, and then see if all's well. Okay. All right. Again, I've said all these things, so let's move on. So now troubleshooting some things specifically. This is very important. Finding the update install log. So after you do an update, if you want to know, did things go well and what went wrong, the first thing to do is to look at the install log for the update. And it's in that HF updates folder under CFusion or your instance name. And again, there's a new folder created for each update. Now, again, I've said some of these things already. I've got them on the slides here for people that just look at the PDFs. You would go to that folder that's created after each update, like in my case of a CF 2025, when on another machine, I'd applied this update. That's the folder that's created for update 1 of CF 2025. That's the folder. And we're pointed to that after the install. It told us in the screen, and in the admin, it said, here's the files, and it points to a hotfix file list and some other stuff. We don't generally care about the hotfix file list log. We care about the install log. And the name of the install log might throw you at first because you're looking for install.log. It's not. It's Adobe ColdFusion, whatever version, whatever update, install, whatever date, whatever time, .log. So I'm going to just quickly go into my CF 2023 again, right? And here was my HF updates, and here's my update 13 that we did today. So in my update 13's folder, again, let me just show you. There's my update 13, 2023, CFusion HF updates. In that folder, there's the hotfix file list log, and here's this log. And again, if you open this one by mistake, it's just a long list of what files got removed or modified or added. That's interesting, but for now, that's not our focus. This is what's important. I'm going to open this, and that's the install log. So it should look like this. And a lot of people think, well, it's an install log. I should go to the bottom and see if it's successful. It's successful. I'm done. Yay. No. That's not the way this log works. I'm not going to explain why, but this log is actually different parts, and they get put together and made as available as this log. Here's what matters. As I scroll down this page, and I always tell people, just hit the page down key once or twice. So if I go down about 2 or 3 screens down, look here, that's what you're looking for, this summary of the installation. And I'm not so much worried about whether it's successful. This is what I'm paying attention to. How many successes were there? How many warnings? How many fatal errors or non-fatal errors? If there's any fatal errors, the update did not work. And maybe sometimes later in the log, soon or far down, it has some explanation for what failed. And that may or may not be helpful. I'm just saying, you want to check, did it succeed? Was it all successes, no errors? That's so important. All right. So that's the first thing, is to check that. So that's that. And it's always about line 75. And then check this out. This is new as of CF 2021. Hear me, because sometimes people know about this and they go, okay, I'm done. It worked. It's good. Like, no, time out. Now you need to say, did it succeed in downloading any package updates? And that you go to the bottom. And I just jumped to the bottom with Control N. So look, it's not at the very bottom. It's not even 5 or 6 lines from the bottom. It's about 8 lines from the bottom. It's this line, and that's a big long line. Now I happen to be looking in VS Code, and for those who don't know, there's a nice little shortcut to do word wrapping. It's Alt Z. So I just turned on word wrapping, little hidden gem, and look, there's a paragraph. I always describe it to people. Let's look for that paragraph, and it says, I'm downloading that administrator package. I'm downloading, and this was 2023, so it also updated the Ajax package, and it updated the HTML to PDF package. And some of the sentences and bullet points are a little messy, but the point is, after it lists what it's going to do, it says ColdFusion is currently not running because the update stopped CF, right? The update stopped CF, and you ran the update, and at the end of the update, it downloaded or tried. It'll tell you if it didn't. That's another thing. If you pay attention to this, you might say, hey, I'm trying to download it. It doesn't work. But if it says I downloaded these, then it says the package, and it should say packages, the package or parentheses packages will be installed automatically once server is up. Again, once ColdFusion comes up. Well, remember, I told you the update, after it's done, it starts CF. So it's not here that it does the install of the updates. It's here it does the download. Did it work? Yes or no? That's important. And then we'll talk about looking at the install log, or sorry, the update, the startup log to see what went on. But there you go. There's the post update. Sorry, now let's talk about this. After the update, when CF starts up, in ColdFusion's log called the ColdFusion out log, or if you're doing things at the console, it'll just, like if you start CF from the console or from within VS Code, you know about using the console at the command line, whatever. You'll see either in that ColdFusion out log if you run CF as a service, or at the console if you run it through other means, look for where CF started up. And I'm going to do that real quick. We just did this, remember? So I'm going to go up to my CFusion logs for my CF 2023. There's my ColdFusion out log right there. I'm going to open it. Now, this goes back to June 22nd, 2024. I mean, you know, depending on what's going on in your server, you could have days, weeks, months, or years of stuff in here. I'm going to go to the very bottom again, and now I'm going to page up. And as I page up, for those of you that use Fusion Reactor, it's real easy to spot when CF starts because there's this big chunk of stuff that says, hey, Fusion Reactor starting first. Anyway, you can see the time, 11:13. So I'm going to keep going and really pay attention to that break in time. There you go. ColdFusion stopped right there. So you would usually see ColdFusion stopping by there being lines that say things are stopping and finally stopped. And then if you ever pay attention to this log, you'll see things. And you know, one of the first things it does is it starts various packages and starts these packages and those packages. And then here's the key. During that first startup, after an update, you will see it say, I am uninstalling packages. Those same ones that were listed as having been downloaded are now going to be listed as being uninstalled during the startup that follows the update. Now, it's a little confusing because these lines all look the same. This is within one of those packages. I don't know which one, but it could be this one. I don't know. I think it is. But the point is, these are files within the package. You can't really tell other than these ones that have no number. That's the name of the package. These ones that have a number, those are bits and pieces within the package. That doesn't really matter. What I'm saying is during the startup, it tracks it. It uninstalls the packages. And then we happen to see Fusion Reactor starting in the midst of that. And then it starts the packages. And I'm just telling you, there was nothing that said installing the package. There's the uninstalling package access. There's not going to be any installing package access. I don't know why. The mechanism doesn't log that they're installed. It just logs that they're uninstalled, and then they are installed, and then it starts them. And eventually we would see in here the starting of the Ajax one. It's not important that we find, there it is right there, the starting of the Ajax one. And you may see some other messages interleaved in here, and those may be normal ones for you. I'm not going to focus on that right now. The point is, then it's all done, and then ColdFusion started. So that's what goes on during the startup, and in particular, the first startup after CF goes down. Thank you for the roll on, Jim. So, sorry, I meant to say after you do an update. The first startup after you do an update, the difference is you'll see it uninstalling packages. You won't see it installing them, but you should see it starting them, and it starts them on every restart. And as long as that's all good, then that's good news. And that's why I'm saying you want to look at that. Okay. So why might they fail? Various things can happen that lead to a failure. Maybe CF wasn't able to be stopped. Well, that would keep it a lock on files and it can't drop in the updates. Maybe it couldn't reach the Adobe server to download the file, so the update might fail to start. Or the package URL might not be reachable, or it might be incorrect. And if it can't download them, it'll fail. And at the bottom of the log, it'll say it failed. And then you might find that packages get uninstalled and can't be reinstalled. I've seen all kinds of weird crap. I'm not going to try to list every possible thing. I'm just saying these are common things that happen. And then sometimes the CF admin will be so borked that you won't be able to start it because the administrator package will have been uninstalled. And it will tell you in the log, I uninstalled the administrator package. And then it may not show that it ever started it. Well, if the admin package is not started, then you're not going to be able to get into the admin. And on the screen, you'll see an error that says, hey, I can't show you the admin. The admin package isn't installed. It's at least able to do that. And it says you should go to the command prompt and use that CFPM tool. So check it out, CFPM install administrator. And it tells you it's in your CFusion bin folder. So you would go to the command prompt, go to your CFusion bin folder, and you would type CFPM install administrator. And that would install the administrator package at the command line. And that almost always just works. And if it doesn't work, it might say, oh, I can't reach it to download it. Well, then you're back into this problem of you don't have internet access, and the attempt by the installer to download it couldn't download it. And if it can't download it, it can't install it. And that's where you might go back to, oh, I don't have internet access, so I've got to do that manual stuff. So remember, the tech note tells you if you don't have internet access, you have to download the files and perform the steps that they talked about in the update tech note. I'm going to leave it at that. And in some rare cases, you might find CF won't even start. Now, I will say that I've had situations where when CF didn't start, people were panicked and they couldn't get to the admin, right? So they couldn't run the installer update from the admin. But I showed you how you can go to the command line and do the update from the command line. And sometimes just trying the update from the command line at that point, you might find it either would just work because maybe it couldn't stop CF and now you did yourself and now you can run it from the command line. I'm just saying there's all kinds of scenarios. I just want to throw these out. Yep, there you go. So now here's an important one, especially for people on Windows. If you're running CF as a service and the service is running as a user other than the local system service, let me show you my services, see what we're talking about. So here's my ColdFusion 2023. And you can see there's 5 columns there. And this column, log on as, is who is running that service. And by default, when CF gets installed on Windows machines, it gets installed to run as a local system. That's a debatable point. It should probably be a different user. You can see here, one time I had set my ODBC agent to run as a CF user. You'll maybe find you're doing that for your CF service. Here's the point. If it's running as local system for the application server, it shouldn't be any trouble. If it's running as a user like this, here's the trouble. When the update launches that Java process to do the update, that's going to try to stop CF. Remember, I told you that's the first thing it tries to do is tries to stop CF. It's going to launch that Java process with whatever user was running CF. So if this was, this 23 application server, if it was running as that CF user, if I was watching Task Manager, I would see, oh, that Java process is running as CF user. Well, that process running as CF user is going to try to stop CF. Well, guess what? By default, newly created users don't have the authority to start and stop services. What? That happens a lot. Newly created users don't have the authority to start and stop services. And it's not easy in Windows to give that permission. There's not like some button you can click. There's some really, obtuse command line, crazy things you can do, but the update's going to fail. And that's the reason it's going to fail, is because it won't be able to stop CF. This is one of the most significant things that keeps people from being able to run their updates in the CF admin. Now, one solution would be to go to the command line and run as administrator, as we've talked about and is discussed in the tech note. You can do that. And that's what some people do. They go, forget it. I'm never going to do it in the admin. I'm just going to go to the command line and do it from the command. Sure, you can do that. But check this out. You can give that user permission. Now, I said Windows doesn't provide a way to do it. No, it doesn't. But there's a company called Core Technologies that offers a free tool called Service Security Editor. I'm going to go there real quick. There's the URL for it, but I've already got it open as a tab in my browser. You may have seen it when I was flipping through my tabs earlier. There you go. So if you just Google Service Security Editor, you'll get taken here. Core Technologies is the company. They make Windows Server tools, lots of cool ones. Check them out later. Anyway, this one called Service Security Editor. See, it says a free standalone GUI to set permissions for any Windows service. And you just download it. That is it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. You just click download, and there it is, downloaded. And I'm just going to run it. There's no installer. I'm just going to click it, and it's going to launch. Yes, it launches as administrator because it's got to do stuff that needs administrator privileges. Look, I just find in here all my services. So I don't know why it's doing that. That's weird. Anyway, so I just held down my mouse, and now I can see. That's never happened to me before. There's probably some quirk at the moment. I'm not going to worry about that. But look, here's my various CF services. So I could find my ColdFusion 2023 application server, and then check it out. This is it. There's no installer. I just click on open, and look, it looks like the Windows permissions mechanism, right? For files. But this ain't file permissions. It looks like it, but it's permissions to start, stop, read, pause, full control of a service. So I'm looking at the CF 2023 application server service, and I could click the add button. And yeah, just like you've seen, if you've ever done permissions for files and folders, you could type in, CF user. And now it's added CF. If I have a user called CF user, it's added that user, and he has full permissions to do everything with that service. And that's it. I click OK, and that's it. There's nothing to do. It's done. It's done the magic under the covers to make that user able to start and stop that service. That's all it did. I'm not even running that service as that user. But if I changed it now, that user, if I ran the update in the admin, and it launched as that user would be able to stop CF. It's a cool tool, and it's free, and that's all it does is change that underlying stuff. It's not even, I don't know if it's registered stuff, but it's just some ACLS commands that you have to do, so I'll leave you to explore more. You can read about it at their website. But that's it. And then I would just do that for the other CF 2023 related services. If I was doing CF 2023, I would do the ODBC service and the add-on service, and just do all the services related to that CF instance. Okay. Some other gotchas to be aware of. I just want to say, if Adobe gives you a special hotfix, I want to remind you that the install process backs up everything that was in the folders that are pertinent to CF updates, and it backs them up. And you may be given a special hotfix jar to solve some problem, and you would place it into the CFusion Live updates. Again, Adobe would tell you, hey, here's a special jar, put it in the CFusion Live updates. And I wrote a blog post back in 2019 on that subject. You can read about that later. But each update thinks it should remove any special hotfixes because it thinks, oh, well, that was a special fix, and the new update will certainly include that. Well, no, sometimes Adobe doesn't roll a particular fix into an update, and you have to remember, oh, crap, I need that update hotfix. So I need that special hotfix again. And I should have recall that the update process and does the backup. It does back them up into that backups folder. It in that CFusion HF updates, there's a backups folder. I'll go ahead and look there real quick. So now we're back up to CFusion HF updates. We'll look at my latest update, 13. And in that backup folder, There's lots of different folders that get backed up, and I'm telling you that one of them is this lib updates folder. And some of you may recognize this one. This was a special hotfix that came out in April of last year. Adobe came out with a special hotfix to create log entries about that search implicit scopes. I have a blog post on that from April of last year and another one from June of last year. You can read about that later. The point is that special hotfix, I had that in my lib updates folder of my CFusion in 2023. It got yanked out by that update. Let me just quickly show you that. I'm going to go up here and change this to ColdFusion 2023 CFusion lib updates. Come on. CFusion lib updates. There's always a lib updates folder. And in that folder, Adobe puts the latest updates CHF jar. So that's CHF 2023 update 13. That's the update jar. One of the core things that gets done is that and a bunch of other files, but that gets put into that lib updates folder. Well, if you got a special hotfix, you would put that into this folder as well. And the two of them together would make things work the way you want them to work. Well, I'm saying when you do an update, CF pulls out of this the old update CHF jar and any special update jars. And I'm saying now it wouldn't be there. So it was there before, it's gone now. And I just told you that it's in my backup for that update. Adobe did back up everything that was in that lib updates. Look, there's the CHF for update 12. That was the old update. It took that out, put it in the backup. And here's that 2023 88888 jar. It's a special one that Adobe created. So I'm just going to copy that to my clipboard, go back into that CFusion lib updates folder and paste it in. And now I've recovered that special hotfix, and I would restart CF for it to take effect. They don't tell you about this. It's not obvious. Not everybody has special hotfixes. But anyway, that's how you deal with it. Okay, so that's that. And I also want to point out, if you're ever downgrading or upgrading packages, pay attention. I'm going to show you in a moment, but pay attention. It may warn you that doing that is going to cause it to downgrade or upgrade the core, which means the whole thing, because they don't want the package version to be out of sync with the core version. And many people don't notice that. So let me show you. I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to show you what could easily happen. So again, we're back on packages. And this is my 2023 where I did go to the latest update 13, right? And remember, if I scroll down the page, there's my installed packages. And let's say I had some thing I read on the web that said, hey, you ought to downgrade your Ajax package. So there's my Ajax package. And as I scroll down here, it says, well, here's the available versions. And somebody might say, yeah, we fixed that problem by downgrading our Ajax package back to update 7. Okay, I'm going to do that. And when I click the button that says downgrade, I want you to watch very closely. Actually, that one didn't do it. It says, are you sure you want to downgrade the package Ajax? There might be something special about that one. Let me go to my 2025. I had 2025 here somewhere. I'm just going to go up here to 2025. And by the way, here's a little trick. I set the built-in web server port for ColdFusion. During the install, it defaults to 8500. You know, I can change it to whatever I want, and I change it to be 8525 for 2025 and 8523 for 2023. So anyway, you know, whatever your port is, here's my 2025. Here's my packages. And let's turn it around and say, somebody might say, oh, you need to update your Ajax package. Okay, so it so happens there's an update. Sorry. There's an update. And when I scroll down, I want to show you something. So yeah, I'm currently on no update because I haven't updated my 2025, remember? And I might say, yeah, somebody said I should update my Ajax package. I'm going to tell it, yes, please update my Ajax package. And I'm going to click upgrade. Okay, well, that one didn't do it either. I'm going to pick another one. I think the admin would be one that demonstrates this point. Because see, there's an update for the admin. Now, thank God, I keep trying to click away to move my mouse button down. So my administrator package, I'm going to tell it I want to go to the later one. Click upgrade. Okay, cool. This is what I'm talking about. If you do an upgrade or a downgrade of a package, you better read this screen, because look at what this says. Yeah, it says, are you sure you want to upgrade the package? So did the other one. This one says, well, this package requires that the server be restarted. Oh, no, that's not it either. That's not what I meant either. I'm just going to tell you that some package upgrades or downgrades, there's going to be a sentence there that says, and this is going to upgrade or downgrade the core. And my point is, if you're on update X and you update some package, it's going to take you to update Y. Just by you clicking this button that says OK, you're installing the whole update. You think you're just updating the package, but if it says on the screen, I'm going to be upgrading the core, you got to pay attention to that. And I just think, I don't know what combination I need to do. Sorry, I didn't get that anticipated up front. I thought it was any package, but it must be some specific ones. But just beware, because some people have found that their whole CF was updated, or the update was uninstalled and rolled back, and they're like, what happened? And I'll remind you, if it uninstalled the update, remember what it does is it rolls back the things to the prior backups. And then the JVM config that was in play 3 months ago is suddenly brought back into play now. And maybe you moved your Java version and the Java home field in the JVM config doesn't exist. I'm not going to go into the details, but that's the kind of crap that could happen. So be careful. And then don't forget, you'll have to remember, hey, if I updated or downgraded the CF core, I got to remember, I should probably also clear the Felix cache, right? So it just becomes a bundle of things. That was the demo I wanted to show you. So some other gotchas, I just want you to be aware, we're almost done here. When you run the update from the command line, be aware, sometimes when you update from the command line, it will start CF not as a service, it'll start it as a process running as you. And if you look at Task Manager, you'll see that. And more interestingly, you'll go to services and you'll try to start it and you'll see it's not running and you'll try to start it and it will say, I can't start it. And it'll give you a scary message like ColdFusion couldn't start, and look at the Windows event log for more information. And this is true on Windows or Linux. I'm just saying if you're on Windows, that's what you would see. Well, again, the point is when you run the update from the command line, it may start CF, not the service, but CF as a process. Like in Task Manager on Windows, you'd see there's ColdFusion.exe, and it would say it's running as you, whoever you are. And if you log off, down goes Fraser. ColdFusion's going down with you logging off. So you don't want to be in that situation. So just be aware if you're running CF update from the command line, make sure if you're running on services, make sure you do see the service started. And if you don't, but the admin works and your app works, it's running as you. And that's, by the way, another negative is that you may not have the authority to be touching some files and some things won't work. And you don't realize, it's all because CF started as me, not as the service. One other thing about that package URL stuff, I said the tech note talks about what to do. Sometimes it'll tell you to download a zip and point this package URL in the admin to a file or folder you extracted. Well, that's great for that one. But then when you do an update 3 weeks from now or a month from now or 2 months from now, it's going to try to use that same URL, which points to the wrong packages if you don't remember to keep that in sync with wherever the packages are being extracted to. That could be trouble itself. I also want to say this. Some people say, hey, I read in the tech note, it says you should use the JVM that's installed with CF when you're doing the install from the command line. I just want to clarify. It's not that you need to use the JVM that's installed with CF. You can use it. There's nothing wrong with using it. It's the easiest thing to do. But if you've updated to a newer JVM and CF is running on that newer JVM, you could use that newer JVM. What they're saying is you don't want to use a version that's not appropriate. Like CF 2023 runs with Java 17. CF 2021 runs with Java 11. CF 2025 runs with Java 21. And the Java that's installed with CF is the appropriate version for that version of CF. You can update that to a newer 2021 for 2025. A new Java 21 for 2025. A new Java 17 for CF 2023. You can do that. They're saying that's okay, but don't try to use Java 21 to update CF 2023. There could be trouble if you do that. That's what that means. I hope that makes sense. I realize it's a bit much for some people. And then lastly, related to the firewall stuff, let me tell you one more thing that can happen. Some of you are going to be working on servers where you've got some server protection software. It's watching, intrusion detection software, whatever you want to call it. And it's watching what goes on. And if it sees something that it finds funny about the update, like, hey, what are you doing touching that DLL? Or, hey, what are you doing stopping that service? I've just last week was working with someone, and I've seen it before multiple times, where the update doesn't work. And everybody's pulling their hair out trying to figure out why doesn't the update work? And then we ultimately discern, oh, you've got this software protection mechanism, and we get the permission to find the logs for that, or have the user, the person responsible for managing that, they go, oh yeah, I can see right here when you did that install, the protection mechanism thought that was a vulnerability, and it undid your install, and it might leave it messed up in a way that it removed files, but then it didn't leave things in the right state. I'm just telling you, watch out for that. All right, we got to wrap up. So best practices, kind of summarizing what I'd said earlier. While the update's running, open up and watch. If you're on Windows, watch Windows services. You should see it go down. You should see it stay down while it does the backup and lays down the files, and then you should see it come back up. That'd be good news. You'd want to see that. Then after the update, check that update install log. Go to that table at about line 75. And then don't forget to go to the bottom of the log and see were packages updated, and were they updated successfully? Yes or no? And then, most important, this is the new thing people don't think of, you have to look at that ColdFusion out log during the startup to see, did the packages, if there were any, did the packages get uninstalled, and was the install successful? Is there no error having to do with dealing with new packages? That's all we're looking for. And then don't forget, if you'd previously implemented any special hotfix, you still need to get that and recover it like we talked about, and put it back in that folder and restart CF. And then finally, even if everything seems good, don't forget, stop CF, delete that Felix cache, and start CF. And again, I would recommend you watch the startup logs, because maybe errors that went away stopped, or maybe you'll see some new errors. The point is, you want to be watching for that. Okay, so that's the wrap up there. And then also, just to remind you, I've mentioned various folders here in summary. Under your ColdFusion 2020 whatever, there's a bundles, which is where the package updates lay down their jars. There's the update installers under that, where the CF admin puts the download of the update jar. That's since 2021 update 2, they do that. And then the CFusion folder under your CF instance, or your instance name, whatever. There's the bin, which is where the CFPM is. There's the Felix cache, which was that thing that should be cleared. There's the HF updates, where each update creates a folder with the logs and backups of that update. And then there's a lib folder where the CF install and updates lay down some of their jars. And under that updates folder, underneath that is where the CHF gets put and where special hotfixes get put. Okay, so I know I've mentioned a bunch of folders. This is kind of a map to find them all later. Just real quick, only 1 minute on this. I just want to say, we've talked about you should update the web server connector. I have on my website a subsite called CF Update, and I had that in a tab. Let's see if it's still there somewhere. There you go. So there you go, carehart.org/CF Update, #WSConfig, and it jumps down to this section on updating the CF web server connector, the WSConfig tool. After updating most updates, say you need to update the connector, or many, I should say many, not most. It used to be many, most, now it's just many. Anyway, I'll leave you to read about that in there. And then you often should update the JVM that ColdFusion uses. And let me be clear, the update does not do that. It's your job to do that. And I have on carehart.org/CF Update a section on updating the Java. And I talk about some of these things. And I've got even a presentation I did a couple years ago on, just like this, talking about how do you update the Java under ColdFusion. So you can watch that whole presentation. And then you might find that the PMT, if you're using that in CF 2018 or above, the PMT sometimes has updates, and that's not obvious. And you have to go into the interface of the PMT. And if it has a little asterisk, there's a package manager there, and there's an update button in there. So my point is, I have a discussion of that in my CF Update page. And of course, I have a discussion of what we just talked about today, very, very brief, like 2 or 3 paragraphs about updating CF. Lastly, I want to say updating Tomcat. Some people say, I need to upgrade Tomcat. Well, ColdFusion doesn't provide for you to update Tomcat. They will do it sometimes. And I discuss that in this section on Tomcat. I just want to clarify. If you're running CF installed with the CF installer or the CF zip extraction mechanism, You don't update Tomcat. You cannot update Tomcat. Adobe has to do it. You just have to wait. Sorry. If you happen to deploy your own Tomcat and use that war mechanism or ear mechanism, then sure, you can update your Tomcat and redeploy the ColdFusion war. But anyway, that's discussed in there. I'm going to move on. So wrapping up some resources, Adobe does have that docs page about the package manager and the CFPM and some about the admin. It's all in there. Big page. Go check that out. And then I mentioned that they'll always do a forum post on the update. So there's the link again to the forum. And, there's a different post for every update. There was one from last week. I'll leave you to read that. And then I did a talk back in a blog post back in 2016 called Solving Common Problems with CF Updates. And I was discussing then, 2016 had just come out. So I was talking to people on 11 and 10, and this was new as of 10. And some people were about that and still coming from CF9. So I was really talking about it kind of a higher level and not as many of the problems as I brought up today, but some of them. So anyway, I'll leave you to read that. And then lastly, if you want direct help, sometimes people hit a problem they just can't easily solve, or they just want somebody else to do the updates or to do them with them. I'm happy to do all that. That's what I do for a living, short-term, remote, by screen share, satisfaction guaranteed. And I can help with about any other CF-related problem. Just go check out the consulting page at careheart.org. All right, so it was 90 minutes. Sorry about that. So we should be careful to keep CF updated. If it's done carefully, it's a few-minute job. I just want to stress that. I know we talked for an hour plus about all this stuff. When you know all what I'm talking about, it's like a 2-minute job to update CF, maybe 5 minutes, okay? It's really fast. If there's trouble, there's usually some simple solution, and I've given you several things that you can watch out for or anticipate and avoid, and that was my goal. And I'm pretty sure there's some things I'm going to realize later. Oh, I forgot about this. So I definitely welcome feedback, comments, suggestions. I could revise the presentation. I'll remind you again, there's the link to the presentations. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the talk and use that QR code. Doesn't matter here. You don't need to do that, but you can take your little picture and get the QR code. And again, this is just standard stuff. I say at every talk. I'm open now for present. I've been watching. No questions that come up. I'll ask now. Are there any questions from anybody? You guys have been kind to keep it quiet, but I wouldn't have minded if you'd asked questions. Cool. I'm almost always using Lucy now. You know what? So let me just say, they said, could you do a similar talk for that? I could. Let me just say, it's surprisingly complicated because there's several ways to implement Lucy. And there's several ways to update it. And then some people will tell you, no, it's not. It's real simple. You just do what? X. Yeah, you do X if you installed it the way you installed it. But if you didn't install it the way you installed it, it's not X, it's Y. And if you did this other thing, it's Z. And if it's, there's the LCO file and there's the jar approach. And you could have installed it as the installer. You could have done a war. You could have the jar. There's so many ways that I don't think it's easy to say. Let me put this. Somebody would say, well, there's no need for a talk. It's real simple. You just do the X. Yeah, what you really need is all these things. And maybe you're saying, yeah, that's what I'm interested in. But I'm just going to say that's going to be an annoying talk because most people do it one way. And the updating a given way, once they find out how to do it, it's pretty straightforward how to do it. It's that there's these other ways. And I'd have to list all the ways and talk about all the different ways to do it. So I'm a little reluctant. But then let me just say this as well. There's big changes, right, between Lucy 5 and Lucy 6 and Lucy 6 and Lucy 7. Now, we did not in this talk about upgrading, right? I made the comment at the front, or I did on the previous version of this talk. I said, this is not about upgrading ColdFusion. This is just about updating from one version to another, one minor version to another, one update to another. I have an entire other talk on installing ColdFusion and another talk on migrating to ColdFusion, the new version, right? Those are all different topics. And same thing with Lucy. Let me just say, be careful, because if you're on Lucy 5 whatever and you're going to Lucy 6 whatever, that's going to be very different. And if you're going from 5 to 7, that's going to be very different. And I don't think you were necessarily asking about that, but I just want to say, doing just the point release updates, let me say this too. Most people that use Lucy, especially in development, they use command box. Remember, I started the talk by saying if you're using command box, you don't have to do any of this stuff. You just tell it to get the new version. But yes, technically, Lucy can be updated, and there's just many facets of doing it, despite some people saying it should be simple. There's really a lot of facets. So I'm going to leave it at that. Roman says, thanks as always. Looking forward to, yep, cool. CF Camp. Yep, I'll be at CF Camp and also Into the Box. So first in 2 weeks, I'll be at Into the Box, and I'll be doing hidden gems in Fusion Reactor for people on CF, Lucy, and Boxlang. Or sorry, Boxlang, CF, and Lucy, alphabetical order. Boxlang, CF, and Lucy. Anyway, hidden gems for Fusion Reactor at Into the Box. And then at the end of May, I'll be doing hidden gems in CF 2025. So yeah, look forward to seeing everybody that's at either of those talks. And then Christian says, thanks for the interesting talk. In fact, let me click the little button here. There's a feature in there you go. Thanks for this talk and sharing the insights. Super interesting stuff. Looking forward to the next meetup. Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. And Kevin had said thanks to my answer to his question. So anybody else, I don't mind taking another minute if anybody has a question. And if not, then again, I apologize for it going now 40 minutes over, but there's a lot of good stuff. And yeah, it's the meetup. We can go long, and it's all recorded, and I hope it benefits people who watch it. And if I ever gave it again, like at a conference, I would definitely have to tighten it up to fit within 45 minutes. And I can imagine some places where I could have left stuff out and just gotten right to a certain point. But I really felt that the points built on each other, and that if I could have done it in an hour, they were all important to do. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that then. Seems to be no other questions. I can't see if anybody's typing, so I'll give you one more moment to cut that to the clipboard and say, wait. But if I don't see anybody say wait, then I'm going to go ahead and presume that there's no more comments, and I'll let you guys get on with the rest of your day, as will I. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. I did the announcement. I've already got the announcement out for Dan Wilson's AI for Devs talk. So go check that out at ColdFusionMeetup.com. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Sorry, it's next week. Yeah, it's the 24th, next week. All right. Until again, I'll go ahead and shut down the meeting. Talk to y'all later.